Beamy Scott, almost 30 graphic designer, aka glorified button pusher, small apartment, stable income, crippling sense of meh, have a girlfriend. We've been together for about 2 years. Things were good at first, like they always are. But over the last year or so, things have shifted. She got really into online social justice stuff. Not the normal kind, but the super intense, terminally online version. Her whole personality started revolving around whatever the cause of the week was. Her main focus became body positivity, which on the surface sounds great. Love yourself, be confident, all that. In practice, it was a bit different. Her social media became a constant stream of aggressive positivity. Posts about how all bodies are beautiful, how society needs to deconstruct its beauty standards. She'd spend hours arguing with strangers in comment sections. She'd send me articles about toxic masculinity and the male gaze. I'd just nod and say, interesting, while trying to watch a video about woodworking. The irony was, for someone who posted about self-love 24/7, she seemed to have none. She was one of the most insecure people I'd ever met. She'd come out of the bathroom wearing a new dress and ask me how she looked. I'd say, "You look great." She'd frown. "Great how? Do I look fat in it?" This was a trap, of course. There is no right answer. If I said no, she'd accuse me of lying. If I hesitated for a microsecond, it meant I thought she was fat. So I learned to give these vague, enthusiastic answers. "It looks amazing on you. The color is perfect." She'd seem satisfied for a moment, then go back to staring at herself in the mirror, pointing out flaws I never would have noticed. Her online confidence was a complete performance. In real life, she needed constant, unending validation. From me, specifically. It was exhausting, like being a professional hype man who was never allowed to clock out. Anyway, a few months back, probably at the start of summer, she found a new obsession. A nudist beach. It was about a 2-hour drive from our city. She brought it up one evening while scrolling on her phone. She showed me some article about a woman who found herself by embracing public nudity. "We should do this," she said, her eyes gleaming with the light of a new crusade. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "No way," I said. "I get sunburned through my shirt. I'm not adding new and exciting places to that list." She didn't laugh back. "I'm serious. It would be so liberating. A space where bodies aren't sexualized, where everyone is just free." I told her I wasn't interested. I'm a private person. I don't even like changing in the gym locker room if someone is too close. This was the wrong thing to say. My lack of enthusiasm was immediately interpreted as a personal failing. It became a topic of conversation every single day. She'd frame it as a crucial step in our relationship, a journey of mutual acceptance. Her arguments were always the same, just rephrased. It's about moving past the shame society programs into us. It would be so healthy for us to see each other in a non-sexualized, natural context. Don't you want to be free from the male gaze? I tried to explain that I don't really feel like I'm a prisoner of the male gaze on account of being a man. That explanation did not go over well. Apparently, I was suffering from internalized toxic masculinity. My desire to wear pants at the beach was a symptom of a deep-seated psychological problem. It was incredible, really. She could twist any opinion I had into proof that I was part of the problem she was fighting against online. I kept saying no, firmly but politely. "I'm happy for you to go with a friend if you want," I offered. "It's just not my thing." Another mistake. "So you don't want to go with me? You're ashamed to be seen with my body." "No, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with me and 100 other strangers. I just want to relax on my day off, not have a political experience." "Relaxing is a political experience for women," she shot back. It was like arguing with a chatbot that only had 3 pre-programmed responses. This went on for weeks. It was a slow, grinding process of attrition. She'd bring it up at dinner, while we were watching a movie, right before we went to sleep. It was always there, this looming nudist beach trip that I had to be convinced to go on. She started getting more tactical. She began framing it as a test of my support for her. I just feel like you don't really listen to me or care about the things that are important to me. All my friends' boyfriends support their passions. I thought you were different, more open-minded. Every refusal was another piece of evidence for her case that I was a bad partner. I felt like I was on trial for a crime I didn't understand. The final push came on a random weeknight. I came home from work, totally drained. She was waiting for me, looking really serious. She told me we needed to talk. She sat me down and gave me this big, tearful speech. It was about how my refusal to even consider this experience with her made her feel rejected and alone in the relationship. How it proved that I didn't see her as an equal partner on a journey of growth. How my discomfort was rooted in a patriarchal fear of the natural human form. My brain just shut down. I didn't have the energy to fight anymore. It was like a hostage negotiation, and she had my peace and quiet tied to a chair. I just wanted it to be over. Fine, I said. Okay, we'll go. Her whole demeanor changed in a second. The tears vanished. She was beaming. She hugged me and told me I wouldn't regret it, that this would be a huge moment for us. I already regretted it. I felt a pit in my stomach. I knew I had just walked into some kind of trap. I just didn't know what kind yet. The day of the trip arrived, a Saturday. The weather was perfect, which felt like a cruel joke. The whole 2-hour drive, she was giving me a briefing, like a general before a battle. Now, remember, it's not a sexual environment. You don't stare at people. It's about appreciating the diversity of the human form in a platonic way. Okay, I said, my eyes fixed on the road. And you can't be weird or awkward. You have to be relaxed. If you're tense, you'll make me tense, and it'll ruin the whole experience. So, my mission was to act naturally in a situation that was completely unnatural to me, and if I failed, it would be my fault. Got it. It's important that we're both on the same page about this being a positive, liberating day, she added. I just nodded. The less I said, the better. We got there. The place was surprisingly normal, just a long stretch of sand with a bunch of people on it. There weren't any supermodels. There weren't any freaks. It was just people. Old couples who looked like they'd been coming here for 50 years. Families with little kids running around. Some college-age kids throwing a frisbee. People of every possible shape and size. It was profoundly undramatic. We found a spot and laid out our towels. Okay, she said, with a deep theatrical breath. Time to be free. She took off her clothes with a flourish, like she was making a grand statement. I felt about 100 pairs of eyes on me, even though probably no one was looking. I took my clothes off as quickly as possible and immediately sat down on my towel, wrapping another towel around my waist. You don't have to do that, she said, gesturing to the towel. Nobody cares. I care, I said. She sighed, a little puff of disappointment. I'd already failed my first test. I had come prepared, though. I had a secret weapon. I pulled a paperback book out of my bag and put on my sunglasses. My plan was simple. I would sit here, read my book, and not make eye contact with a single human being until it was time to leave. I could get through this. I opened my book and started reading. For about 10 minutes, there was peace. The sun was warm. The sound of the waves was nice. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Then I felt a poke in my ribs. It was her. You're not even trying to embrace the experience, she whispered. I lowered my book. What do you mean? I'm here, I'm relaxing. You're hiding behind that book. You're supposed to be present. Look around. See how beautiful and natural this all is. I did not want to look around. I wanted to read about ancient history, a time when everyone wore togas. I am present, I said. I'm just also reading. She huffed. It's like you're ashamed to be here with me. I'm not ashamed, I said, trying to keep my voice even. I'm just not a huge fan of being naked in public. You knew that. She turned away from me, facing the ocean, the silent treatment. Fine by me. I went back to my book. Another 15 minutes passed. My water bottle was sitting by the cooler bag, a few feet away. I was thirsty. I put my book down, face down on the towel to save my page. I leaned over to grab the bottle. To do this, I had to briefly lift my head and look in the direction of the bag. It was a simple, mechanical action. Grab water, open water, drink water. As I was screwing the cap back on, I felt her eyes on me. I turned to her. She had this cold, accusatory look on her face. What? I asked. I saw that, she said, her voice low. Saw what? I was getting some water. Don't lie to me. I saw you staring at that woman. I was completely baffled. My brain was running a quick scan of the last 30 seconds. I had seen nothing but sand, a cooler bag, and the blue cap of my bottle. What woman? I asked, genuinely confused. The one over there with the red hair and the big hat. You looked right at her. You practically drooled. I glanced vaguely in the direction she was looking. There were dozens of people. Maybe one of them had red hair. I had no idea. I honestly have no clue who you're talking about, I said. My head was up for maybe 3 seconds. Oh, so it only takes you 3 seconds? Wow. She was being serious. She was actually angry. I wasn't looking at anyone, I insisted. I was just getting my water. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she said, shaking her head. I bring you to a place that's supposed to be about liberation and respect, and you immediately turn it into your own private peep show. It's the male gaze in action. So predictable. I was stunned. I had gone to incredible lengths to avoid looking at anyone. I had literally stared at a book for 30 minutes straight. The one time I move, I'm accused of being a creep. This is insane, I said, probably a little louder than I should have. You're seeing things that aren't happening. My lived experience is not insane, she retorted, using one of her favorite online phrases. I know what I saw. There was no winning. I was guilty until proven innocent, and there was no way to prove my innocence. My own eyes were the star witnesses against me. I just leaned back on my towel and closed my eyes, trying to will myself to another planet. This was the trap. It wasn't about being free or liberated. It was an exam, a test of loyalty and attention, held in a location where it was impossible for me to pass. Every direction I looked was a potential failure. Looking at her was fine. Looking at the sky was probably okay. The sand was safe. Everything else was a minefield. I decided the best course of action was to get away from the situation for a few minutes. I'm going to go in the water, I announced. She just grunted in response. I stood up and walked toward the ocean. I tried to keep my eyes locked on the horizon. Just look at the waves. Don't look left, don't look right. It's harder than it sounds. You naturally scan your surroundings as you walk. On the way to the water, I had to walk past a group of younger women who were sunbathing. I consciously averted my gaze, looking down at the sand in front of my feet to make sure I didn't step on anyone's towel. The water was cold, but it was a relief. I just floated on my back for a while, looking up at the empty blue sky. It was the only safe place to look. After about 10 minutes, I started to feel a bit better. The absurdity of the situation seemed to wash off a little. Maybe I could just stay in the water for the next 4 hours. Eventually, I knew I had to go back. I waded out of the water and started the walk back to our towels. As I got closer, I could see she was sitting up, arms crossed, staring at me. She had the exact same look on her face as before, that cold, disappointed glare. Oh no. What did I do now? I reached our spot and started to dry myself off with a towel. I waited for her to speak. I knew it was coming. She let the silence hang in the air for a moment, for maximum dramatic effect. "Feel better?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, the water's nice," I said, trying to sound normal. "I bet it was," she said. "Gave you a great excuse for a little stroll, didn't it?" I stopped drying my hair. "A stroll? I went for a swim." "You made sure to walk right past that group of girls, both on your way there and on your way back. I was watching you the whole time. You weren't even subtle about it." I just stared at her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "They were between me and the ocean," I said slowly, as if explaining it to a child. "Was I supposed to levitate over them? You could have walked around the other way, but you chose not to. You wanted them to see you, and you wanted to get a good look at them. It's disgusting." I felt this surge of anger, but it was immediately followed by a wave of pure exhaustion. What was the point of arguing? I was in a place I didn't want to be, participating in an activity I didn't want to do, all to prove that I was a good partner. And every single action I took was being meticulously recorded and used as evidence that I was, in fact, a terrible one. I was being graded on a test where all the answers were wrong. I didn't say anything back to her. I just finished drying off and sat down on my towel. I didn't pick up my book. I didn't put on my sunglasses. I just sat there. My desire to appease her, to pass her impossible tests, had completely evaporated. What was the point? I could sit perfectly still, blindfolded, and in a sensory deprivation tank, and she'd still find a way to accuse me of some thought crime. I decided to just stop playing the game. So I sat there, looking out at the ocean. She was clearly agitated by my silence. She was expecting a fight, a denial, some kind of emotional reaction she could feed on. I gave her nothing. She started muttering under her breath, little passive-aggressive comments about typical male behavior and performative respect. I ignored her. I just focused on the sound of the waves, in and out. It was surprisingly peaceful, in a way. The moment you realize you can't win, you stop trying so hard. You just let go. We sat in this heavy silence for a long time, maybe half an hour. She kept shifting around on her towel, sighing loudly, trying to get my attention. I remained a statue, a very pale, naked statue who was deeply regretting his life choices. And then something happened. Something that changed the entire dynamic of the day. A guy came jogging down the beach, right along the edge of the water. He wasn't just in shape. He was one of those guys who looks like he was sculpted out of marble by a Greek god. Perfect tan, ridiculously defined muscles, longish blonde hair blowing in the sea breeze. He looked like a character from a movie. He ran past our spot, and I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her head turn. It wasn't a quick glance. It was a full, deliberate tracking motion. Her head swiveled like a radar dish locking onto a target. She followed him with her eyes as he ran down the beach, getting smaller and smaller in the distance. Her expression was completely unguarded. It was a look of pure, primal appreciation. Her mouth was slightly open. She was so absorbed in watching him that she forgot she was supposed to be angry at me. He finally disappeared from view around a bend in the coastline. Her head slowly turned back to face the ocean. A little dazed smile was on her face. The silence stretched on for another 10 seconds. I let her sit with it. I wanted the moment to be pure. Then, very calmly, I spoke. "Nice view?" She jumped like she'd been zapped with a cattle prod. Her head whipped around to face me. The dazed smile was gone, replaced by a flash of panic. Color rushed into her cheeks. She was blushing furiously. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "I wasn't looking at anything." The denial was so immediate, so reflexive. It was fascinating to watch. "Really?" I said, my voice still perfectly level, "because it looked like you were watching that guy run down the beach." "I was looking at the waves," she insisted, her voice getting shrill. "You're just trying to deflect from your own disgusting behavior all day." It was a classic maneuver. The best defense is a good offense. But I wasn't attacking. I was just observing. "You weren't looking at the waves," I said, with absolute certainty. "You watched him until he was completely out of sight. You had a little smile on your face." She was cornered. Denial wasn't working. So she switched tactics. She went for righteous indignation. "And so, what if I was?" she snapped. "How dare you try to compare the two? It's completely different." I was genuinely curious now. This was the part that always confused me. "How?" I asked. "How is it different?" "Because I'm a woman," she said, as if this explained everything. "When I look at a man's body, I'm appreciating the aesthetic form. It's not predatory. When a man looks at a woman, it's objectification. It's part of a system of patriarchal oppression. You're reducing her to a set of parts for your own gratification." I just stared at her. She had actually said it. She had recited the script, word for word. She believed it. She believed there were two separate sets of rules for the exact same action, and which set you used depended on which group you belonged to. My accidental 3-second glance in the general direction of a person I can't even remember was an act of political violence. Her long, hungry stare at a real-life Adonis was a harmless act of aesthetic appreciation. Everything suddenly became crystal clear. All the arguments, all the lectures, all the articles she sent me. It wasn't about equality. It was never about equality. It was about power. It was about securing a moral high ground from which she could judge and control my behavior, while her own behavior was exempt from any scrutiny. Her body positivity wasn't for everyone. It was for her. It was a shield she used to protect her own insecurities and a weapon she used to attack mine. I felt this incredible sense of calm wash over me. The anger was gone. The frustration was gone. All I felt was this cold, hard clarity. I slowly stood up. I started to put my shorts on. She watched me, her expression shifting from anger to confusion. "What are you doing?" she asked. I didn't look at her. I just focused on pulling on my shirt. "I get it now," I said, my voice flat. This was never about being free. It was never about body positivity. I sat down on the towel to put on my socks and shoes. A weirdly domestic action for such a dramatic moment. "You brought me here because it's a place where I was guaranteed to fail," I continued, tying my laces. "It was a test I could never pass. You wanted a reason to be angry with me. You wanted a reason to call me a bad guy. It makes you feel powerful, doesn't it?" She was silent. "You spend all day accusing me of the very thing you just did, without a shred of self-awareness," I said. "And the funniest part is, you've convinced yourself that you're in the right, that the rules just don't apply to you." I stood up and picked up my backpack. I started putting my book and water bottle inside. "Your entire belief system, it's not a philosophy. It's just a fancy justification for your own hypocrisy and insecurities. And you know what? That's your problem. But I'm done letting you make it mine." Her confusion had turned back to anger, mixed with a little bit of panic now. "Where are you going?" she demanded. "You can't just leave." I slung the backpack over my shoulder. "You're just mad because you can't handle a strong, empowered woman calling you out on your toxic behavior," she yelled. A few people on nearby towels were starting to look over. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time all day. She didn't look strong or empowered. She just looked small and angry and scared. "I'm going home," I said, my voice still quiet. I turned and started walking away, up the beach toward the parking lot. "You can't just leave me here," she shrieked after me. "Scott, get back here." I didn't stop. I didn't look back. "You're so free and liberated," I called over my shoulder, without turning around. "I'm sure you'll be fine. Enjoy the aesthetic forms." I kept walking. The path to the parking lot felt a mile long. Her yelling faded behind me, replaced by the sound of the wind and the crunch of sand under my shoes. I got to my car. I got in. I started the engine. As I pulled out of my parking space, I took one last look in my rearview mirror. I could see a tiny figure standing at the edge of the beach, hands on her hips. Then I turned onto the road and drove away. The 2-hour drive home was the quietest, most peaceful drive of my life. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove. I felt nothing. Not happy, not sad, just empty. Like I'd just finished a long, stressful project at work. I got home. The apartment felt huge and silent. I took a shower. I washed all the sand and sunscreen and the whole stupid day off of me. About 3 hours later, my phone started buzzing. It was her. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Then the texts started. First angry, then pleading, then angry again. Pages and pages of accusations, justifications, apologies that weren't apologies. I didn't read them. I just saw the notifications piling up. I put my phone on silent and put it face down on the kitchen counter. I made myself some dinner and watched a stupid action movie. I haven't seen her or spoken to her since. A few days later, a friend of hers called me to tell me I was a monster for abandoning her on a nudist beach. I just said, "Okay," and hung up. I know I should probably feel bad about it, or angry, or something, but I don't. I just feel quiet. It's like for 2 years, my life had this constant low-level background noise of anxiety and judgment. And now it's just gone. All it took was one long, terrible day at the beach. Sometimes you have to let people show you exactly who they are. The only thing you have to do is believe them.